What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with the betting preview for this week's Houston Open. I've tried to wait a little bit longer into the week because I wanted to wait for like top 5, top 10, top 20 lines to come out. So we have those available now so we can talk through some different scenarios. We can talk through my favorite bets in just a few minutes here. I'm going to try to get this out here quickly right after recording. Otherwise, if you're looking for a longer form betting preview, I do an hour show for Sports Grid that airs Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock Eastern time. I will link the on-demand version in the description below if you're interested in that. But otherwise, let's get to the Houston Open bets. All right, so if you're watching on the video version, I do have the odds pulled up here, but if you're just listening, I will try to talk you through this. And the top of the betting board to me is kind of a bit of a wasteland. You know, Henrik Stenson 9-1, and then everyone else 22-1 or deeper. It doesn't make really much sense for me to roster or to bet Stenson here, excuse me, on such a short price coming off the first year where he lost strokes off the tee, which is going to be such a critical aspect of what we expect to find success this week. If you forced me to bet one of these guys kind of 30-1 or shorter, it's probably Russ Henley. He played well last week. Obviously has the elite tournament history here in Houston, and he's probably the place that I'd go. But the bet I'm most excited about making is right here, Cameron Tringale, 50-1. And I'll pull him up on the cheat sheet just so we can see his recent form, even though obviously this is more fantasy focused. But on the cheat sheet here, you'll see has played well, you know, so far here in the swing season. He's made all 3 cuts that he's played in, 36th, 16th, and 44th. If you go back to last season, he had a bunch of top 25s towards the end of the year. So now in his last 11 starts, he has 7 top 25s. And if you look at his Houston Open history, he of course missed the cut last year, 78th and 57th in the last 3 years with that missed cut, which is obviously not that enticing, but you get a 5th, a 4th, a T16, and a T8 before that. So he has had success here at the Golf Club of Houston. He's been a little bit volatile, but for that reason, you get him at 50-1, and it's a really good price. I mean, if he had elite course history like Russell Henley does more recently, you know, he might be 30-1 or 25-1, something like that. So he's a really interesting bet at 50-1 for me, especially because I'm pulling up the strokes gained database right now, and I forget his name, Cameron Tringale. I completely blanked on what his name was as I pull him up here. And I kind of showed this a little bit in the video as well, where historically, you know, dating back the full database that I have on Tringale, which is 215 rounds, he's been abysmal off the tee, losing 0.65 strokes per round. It's absolutely brutal. But more recently, he's been a lot better. He's been one of the most improved players. So if you actually just go, you know, the best time frame would be since June 1st of 2019. So his last 37 rounds, which is a pretty significant sample size. He's gained a quarter of a stroke off the tee, which is basically a full shot swing in his favor off of his long-term baseline. And he's actually also improved on approaches as well. So I don't know if you saw that I did that. I flipped back to his long-term form where he gains 0.3 strokes per round on approaches. And then if you plug in June 1st, he actually gains over half a stroke on approaches as well. So he really is just one of the most improved players on the PGA Tour. Really like the ability to bet him here, and hopefully he can raise the trophy. I don't believe he has a win on the PGA Tour to this point. I won't look it up. Someone can correct me, but I don't think he's won on tour yet. So this would be a really good spot to get in a really weak field. If you watch the DFS video, if you watch me on with Pat Mayo this week, you probably realize, you know, I really like Robbie Shelton this week. He's listed at 70-1. I really like, I mean, Doc Redman is 100-1 this week. You start to get a little bit deeper here as obviously, you know, these are pretty significant long shots. So now that we've waited a little bit further in the week, we can look at like top 5 and top 10 type plays. So if we pull up just top 10s here, and we start looking at some of the same guys that we like, someone like a Johnny Vegas, who is great off the tee, you know, you're getting 6-1 odds on him to finish in the top 10. That's a pretty good number. I mean, Robbie Shelton, 6.5-1. Doc Redman, 8-1. So you're starting to get into the range for Doc Redman to finish 10th, which is something that he's certainly capable of doing in this field, is basically the same odds as Henrik Stenson going out and winning this golf tournament. And you just have a kind of a bigger margin of error. You know, he can finish second, third, fourth. Obviously, you know how top 10s work. But let's pull up Doc Redman here really quickly while I have it up. And we can look at his rounds recently. Yeah, so I mean, it was just, obviously we don't have a lot of history on him. He's a younger player. I've got 46 total rounds on him. But I mean, a second place finish right back at the Rocket Mortgage in June, an 18th place at the Wells Fargo. He had an Open Championship finish that was pretty good as well, but I don't have that in the strokes gained database because there is no shot link data for that event, so that's why it's not showing up here. But Doc Redman has been on a pretty good stretch, and what you can do is, you know, go out, bet him top 10. Let's see what his number was here. Right here, 8-1 on that top 10 bet, I think is something that it's pretty interesting. Let's look at top 20 as well, because you can even start to get some of these deeper guys in top 20 bets. This is I had Denny McCarthy last week in a top 20 bet, and he held for me. Let's see who else might be down here. Like Zach Sucher, I'm not sure how he actually pronounces this, but like 7-1 for a guy who I can pull up his stats here really quickly. Is one of the better, especially in this price range, one of the better players off the tee and one of the better approach players in this field, right? So combined, if we call that ball striking, he gains about 0.6 of a stroke combined both off the tee and on approaches. He doesn't really kill you in the other categories. He's had a really good start to the swing season where he's gone 24th and 18th, and you could argue this is probably the weakest field that we've had. I mean, it most certainly is the weakest field that we've had to this point. So if he has posted 2 top 25s in his 2 swing season starts this year, now you get a much weaker field. And, you know, he is going to be 7-1 to finish top 20 here. Like, yeah, that will get an investment from me. And then let's look at some of these matchups. Quite frankly, I've not looked at these yet, so bear with me. Actually, let's go to these. Sometimes we can get, yeah, I'll look through a couple of these. Scotty Scheffler versus Denny McCarthy. Scotty Scheffler is -115. Denny McCarthy -105. That doesn't feel big enough. Let's roll over to the betting tool here. So Scheffler, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of data on Scheffler. So Scheffler and Denny McCarthy. This is going to be, I already know how this is going to go. We're not going to have a lot of data here, but it is going to probably be favorable. Yeah, so very small sample size because we don't have a lot of Scotty Scheffler information, but I mean, I have Scotty as a pretty significant favorite. About 64% of the time he would win a 4-round tournament matchup, which should put his odds around -180, which is obviously much better than the 115 that you're getting him on, -115 you're getting him on, but again, really, really small sample size there. Let's see what else kind of just jumps out at me. Russ Henley versus Pat Perez. Henley's -115. Pat Perez is -105. Some of these are pretty. Let's go to the actual. I want to go to the 72-hole matchups because here we go. Don't want to be distracted by the strokes. I'll bet the strokes like a sucker. Munoz and Harris English. Munoz is a favorite, which is kind of interesting. I would expect Harris English to be a little bit better than that, but nothing really jumps out at me here. Lanto versus Denny McCarthy. I mean, you might want to just target guys against Denny McCarthy, considering he gained 9 strokes putting last week. That's usually not something that is going to be he's going to do again. Kind of Beau Hossler, same thing. He's up against Luke List in this betting matchup here, which is. Again, Beau Hossler gaining as many strokes as he did on the green is probably not sustainable. And then this group betting. So this is actually something that I think is starting to be a little more exploitable. So like here, if you're not viewing on the channel, what these sites do is they basically take 5 guys from each kind of betting tier, right? And then they put odds on them to win against each other in the tournament. So group A here is Henrik Stenson, Daniel Berger, Russ Henley, Brian Harman, and Scotty Scheffler. It's basically the top 5 favorites in the field, right? And you bet one of those guys to beat out the others. And what's kind of interesting is like Stenson is plus 160 to win this group, and the other four guys are all so Berger, Henley, and Harman are plus 440 each, and Scotty Scheffler is plus 450. Are you telling me that one of those guys, Berger, Henley, Harman, Scheffler, is like that much worse than Stenson to come out of this group when we don't even know if Stenson's like he's just by default the favorite because he's long term the best player in the field? Like Scotty Scheffler plus 450, even Russ Henley plus 440 to beat this group of golfers. Like obviously you're trying to pick 1 out of 5, so you're not going to win this that often, but you're kind of being paid out on it a little bit better when you do. The second group here is Pat Perez headlines it, Denny McCarthy headlines it. Like I'd fade both of those guys considering how many strokes they gained putting last week. Kyle Stanley was getting progressively better round by round last week. He's plus 400 to come out of this group with Sebastian Munoz, Kyle Stanley, Lanto Griffin, McCarthy, and Perez. Like you're going to see me lean towards these the bigger odd because golf is so volatile in general. But to get the extra plus side of it. So there, and you can probably parlay some of these too if you want to get really freaky. So then we've got Group C is Russell Knox, Sam Ryder, Harris English, Bud Cauley, Cameron Tringale, which is tough because I really like Tringale, but I also really like Ryder. Ryder's plus 330 to come out of this group. He's the second favorite. Russell Knox is plus 300. Harris English is 380. Bud Cauley is 380. Cameron Tringale is 380. And then the final group is Group D. Luke List 320, Keegan 330, Bo Hostler 330, Matt Jones 330, Carlos Ortiz 420. So I might parlay a couple of these together, but you're going to see me. I mean, if you maybe put in bets here, I'd probably go, Group A, certainly Henley or Scheffler. Group B, I would fade Perez and McCarthy, so probably either Stanley or Lanto would get my dollars there, probably Lanto. Group C would be Ryder or Tringale. I can get access to Tringale other places, top 20s, top 5s, top 10s, whatever. I might go Sam Ryder here. And then Group D is kind of ugly. Matt Jones is probably the name that jumps out here. So I might throw a couple of these in, but I like to keep an eye on these every week. Some weeks we get more than four different groups where these are kind of where I think the books are most exploitable at the moment. I might have to whip something up and see what the true odds for these golfers to actually come out of here is. So if you're interested in seeing that, let me know. Tweet me. It is @RickRunGood or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys later. See ya.